To start off, create a new Unity project and import the raccoon model. This should not take you very long. I sped up the process just because, well, I'm on a time limit here. The raccoon model is mostly pre-configured, however there are some things that you do need to change yourself. For instance, you need to set the visemes and you need to set the animations. The animation controller has already been made and just needs to be ported over and put into the slot here. However, the visemes do need to be set up manually. By doing so, you need to go to the drop down here and then go down and select Viseme Blend Shape. You need to then drag the body mesh onto there. The body mesh is in the hierarchy. Then you will see the visemes when you hit the drop down there. You need to then go through manually and select each one. This is just setting up the project so that we can upload it later. From here, locate the animations controller by going to the anims folder and finding raccoon override. You want to then take this and drag it into the little box here. You want to do this for both seated and standing animations. This now ensures that you can do gestures by moving your fingers around in VRChat. After some basic testing to make sure that everything's in working order, I'd recommend opening GIMP now and we can open our PSD file. I again supplied a fox and a husky edit of the existing raccoon texture. So I'd recommend using those as I reorganize the layers to make them a bit more simple for newcomers. To start off, I drag and drop the reference sheet for Finn, the furality mascot, into the image file. It actually puts it on its own layer, so I do move it up later on in the tutorial. However, this is how it is imported first. I also do believe I change it to the GIMP color settings, but that's your call if you want to do that or not. Now we're going to be using the colorize option to get the base colors down on Finn's model. To do this, we're going to go to colors and then down to the colorize function under the drop down. The colorize option is actually really useful as it is more than just a hue shift. It actually dyes an image's like color to what you tell it to. So for instance, I want this orange to be blue. And I'm here finicking a bit with the eyedropper tool. I don't think the eyedropper tool likes that I use a 4K monitor. I find sometimes programs get a little upset about that. So I go and set the color manually. I go and do this for each layer in sequence. So let's go through and just speed the process up and get through that. It was around here that I actually noticed there were certain parts of the model texture that I didn't need. So I went and hid the extra parts of the hair cards under the tail and the longer part of the socks, as Finn does not have these features on his ref sheet. Once you have your base colors down, it's time to start adding any designs and doing any changes that you think you need to be doing to the model. When you start adding designs, I'd actually recommend turning on the top layer. This layer is a wireframe layer that shows the general layout of the avatar, and you can get a better idea for how the avatar is actually set up as a UV map here. The first thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be adding the little square tuft on Finn's nose bridge. This is just by simply using the brush tool and brushing in a little square object here. It It was around this point that I decided I wanted to actually see the texture on the model, so I started to export it. I actually exported it directly into the Unity project by exporting it into the Unity project folder. The Unity project folder is located in your documents under the name that you saved your Unity project under. Just go to that folder, then go into Assets, then go into Mats, and export it giving it whatever name you want. I gave it, I think, the default name, actually, when I exported it. Once I had it exported, I then took and put the texture into the material. To do this, you just simply grab the texture file and you drop it into the main color slot under the material pane. After a bit of observation, I decided that I like the way that the colors look and I like how I added the little spot there, so I decided to go and clean it up a little more. Here I notice Finn's ear is actually a different color, and I decided to change that. There's a lot of different ways we could have changed that by either just making a new layer and shifting the hue again, or I just actually decided to make a new layer, use the magic wand tool to select out the area, and then just color it in. From here, I decided to add these shoulder patches, which is a little more of a complex process. You see, because the model is split in half, we actually have to keep in mind how these line up on each side. This is where the extra layer comes in handy, because now we can actually use this and line them up by just simply counting the amount of faces between. Faces refers to the little boxes on the model. So we want to actually just keep in mind how many are between each and how this is lining up. And you'll actually see here I mess up the first time when we go in and I pull it into Unity. I was one face off, and as you see, it doesn't line up perfectly. So I go and I pull it down, extend it, clean it up a little bit, and then it lines up well. And now I decided to tackle the tail. The tail actually uses hair cards, which makes this process a bit harder than it should be. So I go and first change the color of the cards, and then after I get the color of the cards changed, and I figure out which cards are where, I actually go and change the color of the mesh under the cards. And by doing so, I actually have to go and count the amount of faces and lines on the tail under. So it does turn into a bit of a tedious process, as I'm sure you can see by me just switching between the two programs a few times here. But the end result is good, and it's worth the tedious nature that it is, I would say. I actually go and do the nose and eyebrows here too, because I straight up forgot to recolor those earlier, so that's my bad. It was around this point that I decided I should recolor the hair as well, and the hair is actually on a separate material, so taking the hair and recoloring it was the process of just taking another texture that's within the assets folder and just shifting the hue, no, colorizing it and getting it to look right on the fox. And here I decided to actually go and fix the crotch area a bit, specifically just smoothing out lines, making sure that they line up on the UV map. This was really fast, and I actually got it right on around the first try. So yeah, same process as the shoulder, so nothing to really comment on here. The next part of the process is a bit more exclusive to Finn as a character, so I decided to just kind of speed through it and explain. This is actually useful for if you want to be adding your own designs onto the persona, like if your character has, say, tattoos or something interesting with their fur. I made a new layer above everything, and then I started to actually go through, and I actually was painting on the wrong layer there, but I started to go through and just add in little pixelated points, because Finn on his ref has this as a note, whereas for transitions, there are pixelated points because Finn's more of a holographic, non-organic character. So I did that to try and capture that. This is an artistic thing as well, something like you might want to keep in mind. And as you see, I just go look at the ref and I add it on the hands. And I do at times forget to keep the guide on. Make sure you have the guide on when you're doing things like this, because the texture does bleed out a bit. That's intentional, but you want to have the guide on just so you're not coloring outside of the UV map. Okay, now we're ready to upload. One thing I'm going to show though is how to actually add a custom icon. Normally Unity will just try and take a photo of the avatar in its A pose. What you want to do is actually add a plane into the scene. Make sure it's not within the avatar at all. Anything not within the avatar will not be uploaded to VRChat. So you can have a lot of things littered about your scene as long as you have the avatar like free of any clutter. Next, you'll want to right click and create a new material, and then go to the shader option here, go down to unlit. Next, find an image. This can be an image you commissioned or drew, just as long as it's safe for work, and drag it from Unity or your file explorer into Unity. After this, you can go and just drag the texture in as you did the texture earlier, and just configure the shader or the material as you did the material that you did on the raccoon earlier. And now you want to rotate the plane 90 degrees on the x-axis, I believe. I had to check myself there. And now just take it and move it back and away from the fox. Okay, and we're actually done. Just go to VRChat, show control panel, wait for it to pop up. You'll have to enter in your login information. Mine was already saved, so I just hit sign in. And I actually go and I move the tab over just so it's easier to access later on. And then just go to Builder. You'll see some warnings, quote unquote. They're not that big of a deal. Don't worry, you're going to be fine. This avatar is pre-configured, so it should work. If it doesn't, we're going to run into issues. Thankfully, the texture is usable on any version of the raccoon, so we're fine. And it'll take a little bit to build, so we're just going to go through that. And once it's done, go back to your scene. You're going to see this thing called VRC Cam in the scene. This is actually the camera that takes the photo of your avatar. So just go and move it, and you're going to see a camera preview in the corner, and just move it so that it's zoomed in on the image that is there. This is an image that I drew for Finn, for furality, just for this workshop actually. So just do that, and you'll be able to see that the icon is now the photo. Name it anything you want. None of these checkboxes matter. Keep it set private unless you want people to be able to copy the avatar off of you. Having it public means that if someone goes up to you and clones it, they'll be able to take it. So don't set it as public unless you really want that. And once it finishes uploading, you'll see a confirmation screen, and you're done. I know that this was a little too fast to follow along. That wasn't the intention with this. This was just to kind of give you a feel for what all we're going to be going through here in this workshop, and give you an idea on what to continue with and how to go about things. So I just wanted to say thank you for watching, and we're going to head back to me live and not pre-recorded. So back to live Kenzie.